Hello film fans and welcome to this episode of the Shillocking. Now, apologies for the week's hiatus, I was a bit busy, so here a week late is my review of the final televised episode of Wild Isles, this time focusing on British oceans. Now, I've got to be honest, um, I, I've enjoyed Wild Isles as a series, but I have to admit it's probably not ranked in my top 5 wildlife documentaries, even just BBC wildlife documentaries. I mean, I thought it's all right, but it's very clearly aimed at a British audience, and I think I've discovered over the course of watching this show that I actually prefer documentaries that are kind of aimed at a more international audience. They feel almost less insular and kind of like are more expansive in their kind of scope. I don't know really what it is, but it kind of feels very kind of narrow-minded in a way that other documentaries that focus on sort of specific places, like for instance Africa, didn't. Um, the series Africa is absolutely brilliant, and I love it to bits. So it's strange that most of the other episodes in this series didn't kind of have the same appeal to me, especially as actually they're set in the country that I live in. Um, but this episode is by far the best out of all the others in the series. It's absolutely brilliant. Now, this is probably to do with the fact it's set in the sea, and therefore shows you stuff that you really haven't seen before. Even on documentaries. For a start, the water looks beautiful. I mean, you really would think in some sequences you're in like the Mediterranean. I don't know which bits of Britain they went to where the water's that clear, because the bit where I live on the south coast certainly isn't, at least not close inshore. But yeah, it's absolutely amazing, and the underwater shots in this episode are beautiful. And there's some gorgeous shots they took with drones. There's amazing shots of dolphins and basking sharks from above, which I really loved. I mean, the basking shark shots in particular. Oh, that was a bit of a tongue twister. Are absolutely magnificent. They really give you a sense of the kind of the power and the strength of these amazing creatures. And in fact, I kind of thought when watching it that it was again one of the few shots in it that could kind of make people want to come and visit Britain just for the wildlife. It did look magnificent. Yeah, just it gave you a sense of kind of the power of the creatures and their kind of majesty under the surface. It was beautiful. Um, the other shot I really liked was the bit with the starfish hunting. And you don't really think of starfish as hunters, do you? I certainly don't, not even the big ones, but they do. And there's these incredible shots of them hunting mollusks under the surface. And there's this brilliant bit where I think it's hunting scallops. And the scallop basically it can only detect movement. So the starfish moves so slowly that it can't actually see it. But when it obviously gets close enough for it to feel it, just trying to like creep its arms around it, the scallop then sort of swims away, and it does this by kind of opening and shutting its jaws really quickly. Do scallops have jaws? You know what I mean, the kind of the lids of the shell, and it kind of shoots off. And what's really cool is it's got no sense of direction at all. So at one point, one of them actually ends up back on top of the starfish in more danger than it was when it tried to escape. And then you see the starfish, like put its arms around it, and it kind of apparently then uses its stomach. It kind of like almost it can kind of eject its stomach onto its prey, which obviously quite a lot of mollusks can do. Are starfish mollusks? They're probably not actually, are they? But a lot of creatures apparently can do this. And they kind of it surrounds its stomach around the animal, and it kind of like almost dissolves it after it's pulled its jaws open to sort of reveal the softer parts within. It's absolutely disgusting. It feels quite alien and surreal and scary, but it's a really lovely shot, and I've really quite enjoyed that bit. And then there's the bit with the seabirds in it. There's a magnificent sequence where you've got bluefin tuna and I think they're common dolphins hunting sand eels underwater. That's really cool. And you've got the gannets coming down, and there is some gorgeous shots of the gannets shot really close in with some, I think, probably like pole cameras. And it's absolutely gorgeous. You feel really up close and personal. Some of the filming in this show has felt a little bit flat, a little bit kind of distant. I felt that particularly with some of the shots of birds of prey hunting, like the eagles and the peregrine falcons. Um, but this felt really nice, really intimate, and it was a reminder that this show had some really good camera crew working on it. Yeah, and I think the shot of the gannets up nice and close is, together with the orcas in the first episode, probably my favourite shots in the series. Oh yeah, and the hobbies last episode as well. That was beautiful. And it just, you really get a sense of how pale and white the gannets are when you get that close to them. It looks gorgeous, and also just the power of them like spearing through the water. It was absolutely fantastic. Other than that, I think overall in this episode, my favourite shots were of the cuttlefish underwater. Now this was an absolutely brilliant sequence of shots. You've got these, like, first of all you see the cuttlefish breeding, and then you see the baby cuttlefish, and they're so cute because they're so small. They're like, I think they're like centimeters, like several centimeters long, but perfectly formed. They're like little miniature cuttlefish, and off they go. And you see them hunting like quite small crabs later on when they're a little bit bigger. And they apparently some of these, I think it's the algae, sort of produces a kind of phosphorescence at certain times of the year, and you see them hunting in the phosphorescence. So it's absolutely like really really cool shots of them kind of spurting forward, and the shower of like blue sparks. It showed you it in the teaser in the last episode, and I had no idea what it was. But it looks amazing, and it got these really beautiful shots of the sort of the little cuttlefish just spearing through the water, and these kind of blue sprays of this phosphorescent glow. It looks absolutely beautiful. And then there's this other quite haunting shot they got of these cuttlefish which have been caught in. It looks like a lobster pot. It probably is like a more specific cuttlefish hunting piece of equipment, but it looks like a lobster pot. And one of the other cuttlefish from outside tries to try and breed with one of the ones inside, and it puts its I suppose tentacles through the one of the holes in the net, and actually tries to sort of intimately touch one of the ones inside. And it's a really quite haunting image. Cuttlefish are quite intelligent. They're like, along with like a lot of other kind of octopi, they're like one of the most intelligent animals in the ocean, along with things like dolphins. So it is quite haunting to see them, and it makes you wonder how much how sentient things like that are. Do they realise those ones inside are trapped? Are they trying to help them, or is it just thinking more along the lines of instinct? But it's quite a cool shot, and it did kind of make you like go oh inside. It was quite a pathetic shot, if you get the sense of the pathetic in the terms of like pathos, and kind of stirring up those kind of sensitive emotions. So yeah, overall, I really love this episode. I think this is my favourite episode overall. It's got some really, really pretty shots in it, and it did make me feel quite proud to be British, which weirdly a lot of the other episodes didn't. I did say they made me feel disgusted to be British. Not like that at all, but it didn't give me a sense of kind of like patriotic pride. This one did, though. It made me think, oh yeah, we have some quite cool wildlife in our country, and that made me feel good. So in that sense, it did a really good job. It also ended on quite a hopeful message. David Attenborough talked about, leaving the British Isles in a better state for our children in terms of wildlife than previous generations have. So it was quite upbeat, which is quite unusual for a BBC wildlife documentary, particularly around in the last few years. I feel like a lot of their documentaries like Blue Planet 2 and Frozen Planet 2 really had quite, not negative messages, but they were very urgent messages about climate change and about the impact of humanity on the environment. This one felt kind of more optimistic and positive, which means it's a bit strange that the BBC decided not to show the final episode of Wild Isles, particularly as a lot of other BBC wildlife documentaries, they have that last kind of environmental message episode. I mean, they've been doing it since like Blue Planet. So it did surprise me that they decided not to televise it. Maybe they just didn't have space. I can't imagine they did it because they were worried to offend people. I mean, because the whole series has had a strong environmental message, so why produce it at all? Yeah, but it's just a bit odd. So yeah, overall, I like this series. It's not bad by any means. There are a few shots in it which I think are gorgeous, and the rest I just think are quite okay. Yeah, it's not in my top 5 wildlife documentaries. I'd probably rate it about a 6 or a 7 out of 10. But yeah, overall, I think it's quite nice. And if you wanted to learn more about British wildlife, then it's definitely worth a watch. It's very charming, I think is the right word. Yeah, it's a charming documentary series, even if it's not outstanding. Anyway, that was my final review for Wild Isles. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, you'd be very welcome. There's obviously the button down below you can press. I also put some links in the description to my other Wild Isles reviews if you're interested in looking at those. And you can also subscribe and follow me on Twitter. There's a link in the description below. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.